I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock. I don't even have to watch a clock.
Hello, hello. Happy Monday. Thank you so much for listening to the Bold Moves podcast. This is episode number 121, and I am the host, Mandy Bryce. Today, I am speaking with Neil Panosian, who is an author and motivational speaker, 2 titles I hope to someday have, and is extremely positive and a great example that you can follow your passion and do what you love while still having a side hustle or even a full-time hustle. I find that super inspiring because a lot of times you might believe that you need to quit your job or move across the country or make some incredible, insane decision to follow what you want to do. But as Neil shows, that is not always the case. Now, if you are interested, or if you are a busy person and you are interested in being happier, please listen on, because this is the author of A Happy Life for Busy People. And Neil was generous enough to offer to donate a copy of his book to one winner. So make sure you keep listening to the end to hear how you can win that book. All right, prepare your smile, get ready to be uplifted, and check out my chat with Neil Panosian. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Bold Moves podcast. I am chatting today with Neil Panosian, who I am excited to hear from. Neil, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
My pleasure. So obviously you know that the show is called Bold Moves, and you must have made some or else you wouldn't be on here. Can you tell us a little bit about your story?
Yeah, actually, it all started from I'm a author and motivational speaker. I influence others to see the positivity in themselves, others in the world around them. But it started from a very negative situation. I work for my day job, if you will, is for the United States Postal Service. And I was told that my job would be eliminated. And when I went home, if you imagine, most people that drive home, which was only 15 minutes, got to be very long with the thought process. And it's amazing what you can come up with when you're in that kind of state. So I did what most people do when they got home, plopped on the couch and turned on the TV to kind of be distracted and change my state. Mm-hmm. But the evening news was on, which if you've ever watched when you're already in a negative mood, probably not what you want to watch. And so I was like, okay.
In a great mood. I feel like the evening news is not helpful most of the time.
It's kind of like the abridged version of what went wrong that day, both locally and nationally. But so I turned that off and I picked up the newspaper. Again, really not that much better. So I went for a walk and I got an envelope in the mail, which is funny because it's one of those things, I don't know if it's ever happened to you, Mandy, but you donate to a charity you believe in and they tell like all your friends how charitable you are. And all of a sudden in my mailbox, there's like 5 requests asking me for money. And here I am, I just might be losing my job. But one of the envelopes had a saying on the outside of the envelope that said, "Better to light a single candle than curse the darkness." And I was like, wow. And I started thinking about that as I was walking. And I was infinitely familiar with the darkness in my life at the time. And I was certainly doing my fair share of cursing. But I was like, how do you light a candle? How in the face of all the negative things, watching the news, losing my job, how can you remain positive? And I was like, I need to know this. And I was not in a financial thing to go to the bookstore and buy a lot of books. But at the time I said, well, I can go to the library. And I had asked the librarian, which I felt kind of foolish, but I'm like, hey, how can I get a book that'll make me positive? And she, being very sweet and understanding, said, oh, you want the self-improvement section. So I thought it'd kind of be an easy task. Walk up to the self-improvement section, very overwhelming. And it's kind of when I was like, why can't there be a single book for the average person that's easy and to just help them turn their lives around, add a little positivity? And then a voice kind of went off in my head, which usually is like, have another piece of pizza or hit the snooze or something in that regard. But then this time it was one of those field of dreams, kind of, if you build it, they will come. And so ever since then, I have spent the rest of my life dedicated to reading every book on positivity I can. I know you're a very avid reader when it comes to motivational things. I've read every book that I can, listened to every CD, and I just started picking out the best. And it was helping me. And my friends said, well, why don't you do that on a bigger scale and help others? So I began my website and then wrote my book. And it's been just one wonderful ride since then.
Fantastic. So we have sort of a similar, I guess, path, but different starting point for it. So I, like you mentioned, am another avid reader of personal development. I go to all the courses in person or buy online courses, and I've started writing my book, same idea, but haven't completed it yet. So it's really fascinating to, be talking to someone who's a few steps ahead of me and hear a similar story and similar passion. So thank you for sharing that. You mentioned your website and the book you've written so far. Want to share that so that we can all find it, anyone who's listening?
Absolutely. My website's free every day there. I share my YouTube videos. I have a YouTube channel too. And as well as things that are a few paragraphs long, it's called Secret, the number 2, andamazinglife.com. So secret to andamazinglife.com. And my book is called A Happy Life for Busy People. Also available on Amazon.com. And as well as I believe there's a link on my Secret to andamazinglife.com. And it is written in a very conversational style, which is what I strived for. There's so many text-oriented books that I wanted you to be able to pick this up, and then for better or for worse, it's like having a conversation with me. If people who know me who read it said, wow, I felt like I was talking to you. So it's a lot of fun.
Awesome. I'll have to check that out for sure. And we'll put all of those links in the show notes as well, so that anyone listening can just hop over to the show notes or my website and be able to find you easily. Do you do a lot
That sounds amazing. Yes.
Do you do much on social media?
I do. I'm on LinkedIn, which is where I ran into you.
Yes.
And I also have a Secret to an Amazing Life Facebook page. So if you are on Facebook and you look Secret to Amazing Life, it'll also be there.
Again, with the number 2?
With the number 2.
Okay.
And I have to ask, maybe you're not allowed to share this yet, but do you have a working title for your book?
I think it's going to be 13 Days to Happy, but that's, again, like you said, a working title. So
very excited.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm curious, with writing your own book, and do you still have the day job, or are you full-time in the personal development space?
Yes and yes. I do work roughly about 70 hours a week. My day job is 32 hours a week now at the Postal Service. They decided that apparently they found somewhere not to get rid of it. I've been there for 21 years now, hopefully kind of working my way out of that. And I spend the remainder 34, 35 hours a week on doing both speaking engagements, working on my website, working on my second book, and developing the website as well.
Great. And are you in Milwaukee or somewhere in Wisconsin?
I'm in, West Dallas, which is a suburb of Milwaukee. But
yeah, I'm familiar. I used to live in Milwaukee a few years
ago.
Really? I'm from Racine originally.
Oh, okay. Well, then you know that right now I'm actually jealous of you because it's like 35 degrees here.
Oh, that's terrible. Thank you for giving me that dose of perspective, because I was complaining yesterday that it was in the 60s and I was cold. I'm like, it's 66. I need a jacket.
and I'm going, when will it be 60 again? I actually used to live in California for a while. I lived in West Hollywood, and every October through May, I do kind of question my idea, but it brought me a lot of great opportunities here, and I'm looking forward to building on those.
Absolutely. I love that. So you may know this, you may not, but a question I love to ask people is, what is your purpose? Do you know it? And if so, what is it?
Yeah, I kind of touched on it earlier about helping others see positivity in themselves, others around them, and the world around them in general, because we're given, and again, it came from my own frustration that everywhere I look, there seemed to be people telling me both what's wrong with myself, what's wrong with the gossip, what's wrong with people around us. And then obviously, like I said, the media likes to breed fear and tell you what's wrong with the world. And I look around, I said, there's so many wonderful, beautiful things in the world. How come they don't get equal press? And you could either sit around and complain about that and say, boy, I wish there was this, or I wish there, or be a part of the solution and bring that to people. And in addition to that, I just like to help people reduce their stress, increase their joy, and become the best version of themselves. I know in one of your videos on makeup, which I thought was very astute in thinking, how some people say that wearing makeup can be superficial, and you said that when people look good and feel good, they do good. And that's kind of where yours, it might be more for the looking good. I try to attack the motivation feeling good, and which is why I can't wait to read your book, because it's kind of probably going to be the best of both worlds. And I just noticed that when people are happy, they're nicer to each other, and if we can just do that one person at a time, the world's only going to get better.
I couldn't agree more, and thank you for the shout out on my video.
Absolutely. I thought it was one of the questions that I actually ask. And so, about makeup, and I'm not that I spend a lot of time asking questions about
Sure.
makeup, but it was a very good question. And I thought a very good question a lot of people would like an answer. So thank you for bringing that to us.
Thank you very much. My pleasure. Speaking to your point about the news and how positive news doesn't seem to get as much good press, that's one thing I love about Ellen on TV, is she, brings so much good news, and then her videos go viral. But one of my favorite, I don't know if you do Instagram, you mentioned Facebook, but there's an Instagram page called Tank's Good News. And it's this comedian. He has like another page that is sometimes even distasteful jokes, but he has this page, Tank's Good News, and it's all positive news. Like, it's the cutest thing or the most heartwarming thing. Like, this little girl, gave her piggy bank to bring or to pay for milk for her classmates, and then it caused a movement and people donated thousands of dollars to do the same thing. Or different stories about puppies or people who have been married 70 years. It's just all really happy stuff. And so I just wanted to shout that out on here, because if anybody's listening and feels like they need a dose of good news, Tank's Good News on Instagram is an amazing page that's finally doing what I think should
And I'm glad you bring that up, because that's one of the things I teach in my seminar is a lot of people struggle with, well, how can I decrease the negativity in my life, with all of it around negative coworkers, boss, maybe even sometimes family members, as well intentioned as they can be. If you're friends on Facebook, you go and hear about all their health problems. Or I said the easiest way to decrease negativity, and I'm actually going to write a post on this on my website, is to increase positivity. And that's, subscribe to Instagram pages like you just mentioned, or even if you go on Facebook and you search groups and you just type in positive or happiness, there's a million of them. And that way, even if you don't, because it's kind of hard to eliminate, Aunt Betty talking about her gallbladder or whatnot, because it might cause awkwardness at holidays. But if you, in addition to that, you have a site that has inspirational quotes, or even just a subject you're interested in, like if it's anything from makeup to fly fishing to whatever, and all of a sudden you see a post on that, it adds positivity to your day. And I think that kind of really, is one of the easiest ways. If you're trying to be healthy, instead of trying to eliminate everything all at once, try having a salad for one meal a day, or start going to the gym at least one day a week. And then you can always build on the momentum. And I think that makes it a lot easier.
I totally agree. And you're giving fitness and nutrition advice that I've given before. So we're definitely on the same page there. And I don't know if you know this, but you can hide people's posts and stay friends with them and just have them not pop up in your news feed. So if there are toxic people who are continuously negative, you don't have to see it, which
I just worry about, like I said, the family thing, all of a sudden, Anybody, would you see my picture of, But yes, you're right. Absolutely. Hide that. See, I even have a positivity cup my lovely lady bought for me. Mr. Happy.
Perfect. It's adorable. Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I guess whenever I don't see things in my news feed, it's just because, you don't see every post. So there's always that too. But yeah, I totally agree. And one of my favorite personal development people is Darren Hardy, and he doesn't watch the news or read the news for the reasons that you mentioned, that it's like a condensed version of all the bad things going on. And he said, you know, if you're not going to do something about the bad things that are going on, whether it's politics or famine in other countries or war in other countries, like if you're not going to do anything about it, you can't feel sorry enough for other people or sad enough for the world to make it any better. So watching it's really just torturing yourself unless you're going to actually make a change.
Very true.
Yeah.
And
So
it kind of brings you down from an emotional level. And like I mentioned that you said on some of your videos, you know, when you feel better, you're going to do better. So if the first thing you do in the morning is watch the morning news to, you know, even if it's just to learn the weather, there's weather apps you can get for your phone.
yeah.
But if you just see a couple, I mean, if you wake up and the first thing you hear is, you know, murder or calamity, it's not going to get your day off to the start. And that's why I recommend you, you know, start your day off the first 30 minutes when you wake up and the last 30 minutes when you go to bed, scientifically, is when your brain is most susceptible to suggestion. And I think that's when it's most important to fill it with something good. Even just begin, I always begin when I first wake up by thinking of what I'm grateful for. And it would be amazing no matter what the day is, even if it's 35 degrees out and looks like it's going to snow, you know, at least I can have be on a fabulous podcast being interviewed in the safety of my wonderful warm home. There's always something to be grateful for.
Absolutely. It sounds like we have the same morning habit. So this could be something that you're grateful for as well, but I always like to ask people what the scariest thing they've ever done is. So what's the scariest thing that you've ever done, Neil?
I think, well, there's been a few trying things actually lately. I don't know if they've been scary, but they've probably been one of the most challenging things that I've done. And that is, even if you are a motivational speaker and author and you do everything the right way, there are times that life will throw you curveballs that you just can't plan for. Recently, I've had two people that I cared for greatly pass away. One was older and one was quite young. And they both asked me to speak at their funeral. And to not only lose somebody you care about, which is a very emotional thing, but to have to get up in front of all their friends and family and be the one who gives their final respects and sends off a bit of a challenging, even for somebody who is a speaker. So I would think that that was one of the most frightening from a, oh my gosh, I really want to do this right and respect the person and their family and everything they're going through. But at the same token, you have to know being asked is a great opportunity. And I think it was Napoleon Hill that said in every obstacle lies the equal seat of opportunity. So at that point, what helped me was instead of saying, oh my God, I have to do this, you know, I hope I don't screw it up, I turned it around to the other people. Okay, you know, there's an opportunity to help everyone else here. There's an opportunity for people who haven't read my book or like yourself have not studied a lot of motivational things that might have a hard time dealing with this grief, and what can I give them that could help them? And as soon as I turned it around to that, I was able to get up, and I'm not going to say I delivered it flawlessly with no emotion, but it was a lot easier than if I would have just kept the focus on myself.
Yeah.
In fact, that's when I tell people when they're in a bad state, and this happened, there was a dark period in my life I went through right before, obviously with the losing the job and such. There was one of the ways I got out of it was I volunteer once a month at a meal program, and I decided to go down there an extra couple days, and it was more of a matter of perspective. It was Gandhi who said, I once cried because I had no shoes until I met a man who had no feet.
Right.
And you go down and you serve people and you can bring them your happiness and your joy. And you can see that there are always people who are far worse off than you. And even in your greatest problems, you realize you have no problems in essence, you know?
Absolutely. I think I've heard a phrase where they say if everyone you knew threw all of their problems into a bucket and you could pick your own or pick which ones you wanted, a lot of people would probably grab their own when they saw what other people were going through and had no idea.
That's very true.
I'm sorry for your losses, but I'm sure that you did a great honor to those people, both the people who have passed and the families and friends who are left behind. And I'm sure it was a great choice of you to read the respects.
And I learned a lot. The lady in my life was absolutely amazing through the whole incident. And not that I didn't appreciate her before, but it gave me a whole new way to look at her and say, wow, I have an amazing woman in my life that I love. And so a shout out to her because she when I was not at my best, she was at my best, or at her best, helping me be at my best. So that was something that, again, out of every trying situation, there's always a positive you can pull out of that.
Absolutely, as long as you're looking for it.
Right.
So you've kind of already shared this and how you worked through the, nervousness about delivering these speeches, and how you turned it around away from yourself and served others to bring your own spirits up. But if someone is facing a scary decision or about to make a big, bold move, but needed to sort of push past fear, what advice would you give them to do that?
I think there's two things that I would really stress. And one is to focus on the perspective, like we kind of mentioned, that even though it could be scary, that to focus on what they do have to be grateful, what they are going to be taking with them. But the second thing is to get strong with their purpose. I think it was Nietzsche who said, a powerful why can overcome almost any how. And if you know why you're doing it, and that's most important, because in any challenge, writing a fabulous book called 13 Days to Happy, for example, there's going to be days that you're like, wow, I can't do this. And why am I doing this? And then when you remember why you're doing it, why you get up and why you're striving towards this goal, there's a lot of people that come to my seminars that are interested in weight loss. And I said, if your goal is to I want to look better, that's not going to be enough to get you through those days when it's cold and snowy and you don't want to go to the gym, or you're at a company function and they have donuts spread all over the place.
Sure.
I told them, I said, people are driven by two things: their desire to gain pleasure and their need to avoid pain. And if you can work in both of those, in the weight loss example, I have people say, well, maybe you're trying to get healthy so you have the energy and vitality to do the things you want to do, and so you can spend the maximum years with those that you love, and you want to see your children, grandchildren graduate from college. And if you're not healthy, that's not going to happen. So it's not that you're going to scare yourself, but you want to know both what you're going to gain by making your decision and what you stand to lose if you don't make it.
That's great advice. One thing that I would question there, because I asked you what your purpose was and you knew, what if somebody is not sure what their purpose is, either in something specific related to a goal, like you mentioned with weight loss and figuring out kind of the why power behind why they should not eat the donuts or why they should go take a walk or go to the gym, or in life in general, if they just feel like they don't know why they're here? What would you recommend to either find purpose or be able to still keep moving forward without having a clear purpose?
There's probably whole courses done on how to find your life purpose. But in a nutshell, the two things that I've found that are helpful is, first of all, think about what you wanted to be as a child. I know I wanted to be a rock star. I was in a band when I lived in Hollywood. I was in a band for a while, and I wanted to be a talk show host, which I think would still kind of be fun. And I thought back, like, okay, well, why did I want to be those things? Well, I wanted to interact with people and help affect their state and put them in a good mood. And I think if you think about what you wanted to be, and it might not be everything. I mean, I also wanted to be an archaeologist for a while, still working on how that ties in. But if you look at everything you wanted to be, there's usually a common thread as to why you wanted to be these things. So I would think that that's one of the things. Another thing is, it's simple exercise, but just think, and I know there was in another one of your videos, you had the thing you learned at the seminar about the man asking you about the $1 billion, if you had $1 billion. And it's basically, like you said, if you have your health, your family, and your mind, your purpose. Well, to find your purpose, I think if you think you're financially independent, you wake up Monday morning, everything's paid for, you're healthy, what are you going to do? And then on Tuesday, what would you do? And Wednesday. And when you start thinking about, some people would say, well, that's crazy. I would go out sailing, and I like to be around boats. Well, there's 50,000 careers in the boating industry. Maybe that's something and I think a lot of people feel, well, either A, economically, I wouldn't be able to make it if I work with my passion, or B, there might be enough opportunity. But when people are working their passion, one, the money usually ends up following. You might struggle for a while, but it won't be struggle because you're going to be doing what you love. And two, the best way to help the world is to have as many people living and doing what they're passionate about. And I'm an author, and like I said, I started, like alluded to, I still have a day job and work at the Postal Service, but now the hours are actually switching, and I'm becoming a full-time author and speaker and cutting out the Postal Service. So you can start your passion at night, and even if it doesn't become a career, there's a lot of people that I know that are writers or painters or sculptors, and they might find it hard breaking into the art world, for example. But they do that at night, and even having that passion to come home to is something that really can make your life better. And when you find your why, one of the things that I think is best is it helps your moral compass. Because in my life, like I said, I like to have people see the beauty in themselves and the world around them. Well, I can carry that into my day job. I can carry it when I'm in line grocery shopping. And I know if I say something because, the cashier's not friendly and I say something curt or off color, I have to stop and go, you know what, Neil, that's not following your life purpose. And that's against your moral code. The person might have kind of had it coming to them or whatever, but that's not what I am about. So
Right.
I think it helps you set your own, am I going in the right direction or not?
That's
I hope that
great
answered your
advice.
question.
It did. I think those are great tips. And I think for sure you're right that there's got to be tons of books and classes and everything on finding purpose. But I think that that's a great idea to kind of go back to the beginning and, you know, either think about what you love to do as a kid or imagine yourself being now. Or if you won the lottery or whatever, like how would you spend your time if you had unlimited free time? I think is a great question too. So those are great tips to hopefully start people on their course of finding their purpose. So thank you for sharing that. So,
Absolutely.
of course. So I know you have a book and you gave it a little bit of a shout out. You can do so again if you would like, but I'm wondering what books you have to recommend to anybody who's looking for more positivity or even just an enjoyable way to spend their morning or evening
There's actually two of them. By the way, when I did say my book, A Happy Life for Busy People, thank you. I will give another shout. The risk sounding ego driven. I actually did like reading it. I mentioned My Amazing Lady. She is actually not much of a reader. She's a fabulous baker, makes designer cakes, but she's not much of a reader, and it's funny because I don't eat cakes. So somehow we still coexist.
or
Everything's amazing. But she wanted to know what was in my book because she loves me and wanted to know what's in my head. So every day at night, I read her a little bit of my book, and going through it and rereading it, even though I'm the one who wrote it, a lot of the information has kind of been gathered over things that I've collected over 20 years of doing this, the best of the best, if you will. So it was a good reminder. And I often tell people, that you should remind yourself every day of things that might seem basic, but not all of us, when we get busy, you forget a lot of things. So obviously my book, but my favorite book to read of all time, I have right here, is How to Win Friends and Influence People by Dale Carnegie. It's great if you're in sales or in any people-oriented business, but also just in life general. There are topics about how to get people to your way of thinking, how to tell people that they're wrong without them being offended. It is an amazing book. I'm probably reading it for the fourth or fifth time and still learning things new. I also like books on law of attraction, books like The Secret and The Power. I really enjoy reading them. And from a recreational standpoint, again, once we started the reading thing, my lady and I continued it because it's a good bonding experience and something we like to do. We're now reading a book by Dean Koontz, who I'm not really into. He kind of writes more of these suspense, horror aspect.
thriller kind of movie books, right?
Yes, but he wrote a book called A Big Little Life about his dog. And just the way he wrote about his life with his dog is absolutely fabulous and fun to read. And I would recommend that book to anybody. It's a fun time.
Interesting. I wouldn't imagine him writing a fun book. Because
Yeah,
I
neither
see
would
the
I.
covers in the airports, and it's always like
Yeah.
a bloody knife sticking out of a stump or
And like I'm like, okay, Dean Koontz, but I gave it a shot and I can't put it down. We had such a blast reading it. So yeah,
nice.
I
How
would
did you
definitely
find
recommend
out
it.
about it?
A friend of mine who's a big Dean Koontz fan kept telling me, you got to read this book. You got to read this book. And I was like, it's not my genre. And they're like, no, you will like it. And it's just, as I can see with your cat, it's all about the miracle of pets and what they bring into our lives, and how, a lot of people miss little things that only pet owners would understand. So and the way he wrote it, I have to confess, I haven't read any of his horror books,
Right.
but if he writes like that in them, it's a great writing style to read.
Cool. Do you have pets?
Well, my lady has a cat. I
Okay.
don't hate on me. I'm more of a dog person, but the cat loves me to know it,
Yeah.
and I'm allergic to it, so it works out well that way.
I'm also allergic to Refugio. I wasn't when I got him, but he's 14, and about halfway through was when I started being allergic to him. And everyone that meets him says he's not like a cat. He behaves like a dog and just isn't a cat body. So he plays
Yeah,
fetch and follows me around, and he's in my
I have.
lap, but he's too low for the camera.
It's kind of funny because he looks just like my lady's cat, which she also says is not like a dog. Follows me around, greets me at the door when I get home, and I'm like, I'm allergic to you. I'd really liked it, but yeah. So we're in the same boat, and
Yeah.
her cat is 14 as well. So
Oh, crazy. Yeah,
yeah.
I love it. Zyrtec is, I mean, this is not a Zyrtec commercial. I'm not being paid to say this, but it helps me.
So I use Nasacort, again, not a paid sponsor, but works pretty well. I love Zyrtec, but it makes me sleepy.
Really?
Yes, I take it at night, I'm okay, and then the next day, still good. So
Oh, okay. Interesting. Haven't heard that, but I guess I will add that as another thing to be grateful for, that Zyrtec
yeah,
is
exactly.
that I can still take it. So thank you for the book recommendations. That's really interesting. I had no idea that Dean Koontz had ventured so far out of the genre that has made him a famous author. So that's really cool. And I like to see that he's doing something so different. It's a bold
And
move.
I do believe a good portion of the profits go to Canine Companions for Independence, an organization of dogs that help people with mental and physical disabilities. So that's cool too.
Oh, awesome. Definitely a bonus whenever there's a charity involved. I love that.
Absolutely.
So you've given book advice, and of course, as a personal development guru and motivational speaker and author, the whole entire interview has been peppered with great tips for people who want to be more positive and live better. But I'm wondering if you had any other advice that you'd like to share with listeners or viewers, anything that you've learned that you wish you learned sooner, or that was super impactful that you'd like to pass along and haven't already said. Here's your opportunity to impart some more advice on the Bold Moves listeners or viewers.
Thank you, because there's something, it was kind of funny when I began working on my second book, which seems to be perpetually a work in progress. I thought it would be easier than the first, but maybe I'm just being harder on myself. I don't know. But one of the most important things because often when I meet people, either at seminars or even once in the men's room, actually, somebody asked me, how can I change my life right now? Which is kind of a crazy question, because your life didn't get to where it was overnight, and expect to change it overnight. It's kind of like going to the gym 35 pounds overweight and saying, I want to leave in shape by the time I leave. It's not going to happen. But I understand we live in
Rent then.
yeah, yes. But I understand we live in a nanosecond world, and people are used to feeling good with a pill, which leaves them, the problems are still there at best, and they become chemically addicted at worst. So but yet they want that thing that'll turn their life around with the least amount of effort and the most amount of effect. So there are a few things I recommend. One of them is, and this is so simple, but it will literally change your life. And if viewers don't believe me, I welcome them a challenge, because I did this. And when I began it with a large dose of skepticism too. And after like a month of doing this, I became an entirely different person, and so did my life. And I'll tell you why. The practice is writing about 3 to 5 things a day you're grateful for, and why. The why is important because it makes it compelling. If you just say, I'm grateful for the sun, I'm grateful for it's
Sure.
better than not, but adding why, I'm grateful for the sunshine because it makes me happy and hopeful for spring. And when you do this, when I began, I said, look, okay, I got to remember, because I'm going to prove that person wrong that told me about this. And, so I got to remember to write these 3 things down. And eventually it trains your mind to start looking for things that you can write down for. which in essence means you're looking for things that you're grateful for. So your whole life starts to turn to a focus of being grateful, and you activate a part of your brain called the reticular activating system. I don't know if you ever heard of it. It's like when you buy a new car and suddenly you see that car everywhere.
Yeah.
And everybody else didn't just go out and buy the car. It's now your brain knows, hey, this is kind of important to us. So it starts noticing all those different things. And
Sort
the
of
same,
like Facebook ads. If you go to a website, then if you're
yeah,
looking,
yes.
those shoes pop up in the sidebar.
And that's why Madison Avenue spends billions of dollars trying to get into our head. But you can do the same thing. You can, in essence, brainwash yourself before anybody else gets a chance to do it. And when you read those, I recommend that people do that and then read them first thing in the day and last thing before they go to bed. And again, it's one, because like we talked about earlier, your brain is most susceptible for suggestion, but also, hey, if you started your day out thinking, wow, yesterday, these really great things happened to me. And then you end it by going, wow, today these really great things happen to me. And imagine what kind of dreams you're going to have. And even if something doesn't go perfect when you head out the door, which is always going to happen, at least if you start up here and you end up down here, it's better than starting lower, you know? So that's one of the things I recommend. And I just began, but the funny thing about that was when I went to write my second book, I said, how did I word this in my first book? And for some strange twist of fate, it got left out. There's a million different great suggestions in my first book, but that one got left out. But that is the number one thing that I would recommend people do, is start an attitude of gratefulness. And the other thing I would recommend is really what we touched on before, and that's just increasing your influence and your getting in touch with positive influences, whether it be books or podcasts such as this, or going to my website and checking that out, secrettoanamazinglife.com, or finding something else, just going on Facebook and searching happiness or searching motivation and having that pop up. I definitely, we all need a little help. There are all days that we have problems. And I think being surrounded by positive influences makes a huge difference.
Of course, much like the whole entire rest of the podcast interview, I am going to echo an agreement on both of the pieces of advice you gave. The first one is something that is really near and dear to my heart. I have a Thanksgiving gift. If you are going to keep this podcast from your lady, this could be super helpful. I know I already mentioned Darren Hardy. I'm not sure if you're a fan of his or not, but
yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah, in the Compound Effect, I think it was that one that he mentioned, for a year, starting on Thanksgiving, he wrote down one thing in a little book that he was grateful about his wife, and then gave it to her on Thanksgiving. And can you imagine a book? And like, same idea. You're looking through the lens of gratitude, and you're looking, instead of like, oh, she, left the laundry on the floor, or she ate the last whatever, like little irritation things, you can think, okay, like, wow, she's bought me this awesome coffee mug and is thinking about me, and just every day thinking through that. So I did that for my husband a couple of years ago, and he said it was the best gift that he ever got. But it's a little hard to keep up, so I haven't done it again. Maybe I should this year.
Yeah, even if you do it once a week, imagine getting a book of 52 things that somebody is grateful and happy for about you. That's an amazing idea. I'm definitely going to share that with my readers, if you don't mind as well. I think that's a fabulous idea.
Well, it's Darren Hardy's idea. I'm just sharing it. So
well, that's kind of how it works, right?
Yeah, exactly. And then it also reminded me, I've listened to a few of the Zig Ziglar talks via their podcast, and he's spoken of like people who hated their job, or were coming from a much more negative place, opposed to appreciating their spouse or significant other. But if you think about your job and all the things that it gives you the freedom to do, or think about your bills as like, okay, yeah, it sucks that I'm paying $100 for internet, but with this internet, I can have a video conference with somebody, near my hometown, and I can look up whatever information I want. And thinking of the privilege that you're given from whatever bad thing it is really, that shift in perspective and focus, I think, can make a huge difference.
I was also on that regard. I was also told when you pay your bills, you got to think, hey, like you mentioned, I'm paying for internet or I'm paying the electric bill, and not only does it keep the lights on, keep being able to allow us to do things like this, but you're actually paying for the people who work there. You're allowing them to live their lives and to buy food for their families, and it is kind of all in how whether the glass is half full or half empty. I have friends who are realists who tell me, well, either way, there's the same amount of water in the glass. And the other day I was thinking, I said, that's absolutely correct. So if life is kind of like that, sometimes it's half full, sometimes it's half empty, and the only thing that's different is your perspective on it, and that doesn't change anything, well, then the only difference is whether you feel good or you feel bad. And the great thing is that's entirely up to you. And it's all to change your life. You just change your focus and you change the meaning. I definitely recommend, just to add one more thing to the question you asked me earlier, for people looking to change their lives, when things do happen that are challenging, the two questions I always tell people to ask are, what can this mean? What else can this mean? And that takes some thinking. And how can I use this? Because inevitably, every experience, even if it's just today was so bad that it'll make tomorrow seem better. I mean, if that's, and that's sometimes how you have to start. But there is always something, like I mentioned, I learned so many more amazing things about my lady that she could have only showed me if I went through some dark and trying time. And certainly you wouldn't want to choose to do that. But if I just sat and said, woe is me, that's just going to make me feel worse. So I focus, hey, how can I use this? And what else can this mean? Well, maybe it can mean that I can learn a lot about the woman in my life that I love. Maybe I can learn a lot about the people I can depend on. And I can use that when, I'm thinking, boy, I don't have anything going for me. I can remember how amazing she was to me. And just, it really keeps you motivated.
Sure. And I think the what else can this mean, especially if it's an interpersonal thing, is we can be really quick to assume the worst in somebody. And I know for me with my husband, it took me a long time for sometimes we would not be on the same page and I would kind of assume that he meant something terrible or he had some like awful motivation. And he would be so confused when I would tell him what I was thinking and he'd be like, I love you. Like, why would I not have anything but like the best intentions? And it took me forever, like 8 years to learn that. So
I'm a big fan of Tony Robbins, and he does a lot of relationship stuff now. And one of the things that I got from him that has helped me significantly is just exactly talk. You question and be upset about people's actions and the results or how they make you feel, but you should never question anyone's intent, because once you do that, you're actually questioning the person. And boy, as you mentioned, it's not easy to do because you're sitting there going, well, why, if they were not trying to be malicious, why on earth would they? And they might love you and they're just confused and they have different values from you. So and it's a lot easier when you say, hey, I know you didn't mean to hurt me, but wow, this really stung. Being on the receptive end of that, to hear it put that way, to understand that, I know you love me, but when you did this, it really upset me. Entirely different conversation.
Right. And I mean, you said don't question, and I think you mean like don't guess about somebody's intention, but it's a great time to ask, like, okay, what were you thinking when you said that? Like, where was that coming from or why? So then that way you can learn, okay, this came from somewhere else than what I assumed, and, learn.
Yeah, that's excellent. If you don't know, the bet, rather than assuming, just ask. Well, I'm sure they'll be more than happy to share with you why it happened, but yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and speaking of why, going back to your challenge that you gave to people to think of the things they're grateful for and why, that's such a huge thing because it can be so easy to list off, whatever it is. Like someone's grateful for coffee or someone's grateful for their warm house on a 35-degree day, but like why? So I love that addition. That's fantastic. Thinking about, this place of gratitude that you're in, and this is my favorite question to ask, so you probably already know what it is and are ready for it. But if 8-year-old Neil had a crystal ball and could see where you are today and everything you've been through and what's on the horizon, on a scale of 1 to 11, how excited would little Neil be to be where you are now?
I think little Neil probably would have said, "I told you so," about a million times, and would have wanted me to have more faith in myself, but would be very excited that I'm happy you finally found your purpose, and now you're going to be able to make a difference. And one of the things in my book, A Happy Life for Busy People, I encourage people to do is to write letters to their younger self, explaining where they are, and to write a letter to their older self. And just exactly what that question that you asked does is puts a focus on, where you are in your life, and would you be happy with yourself looking in the mirror? And I think, all of us, there's things that we wouldn't be, but generally speaking, I would definitely say, I think younger Neil would be excited, especially now. Like I said, I found an amazing woman to share my life with. I surround myself with amazing friends, and I'm starting to do amazing things. Always looking for more opportunity to share my message of positivity. So thank you for allowing me to do that. But and to touch more lives and to change the world and make it a better place. It might sound esoteric or a little pie in the sky kind of thing, but I think if every one person tried to change the world, that's how the world changes. And what I learned is when I set out to change the world, the most important thing that I could do to change the world was change myself. And I think that's where it all begins. When you start at home, and my quote that opens my second book, to give you guys a little sneak peek, is, until you change yourself, nothing will change. But once you change yourself, everything changes.
Man in the mirror.
Yes, it really is. People think that they buy my book, it's going to be called Living the Dream, Turn the Life You Have into the Life You Love. And people think, well, how can I need to change my relationship. I need to change my job. It's going from one fire to another. But what they don't realize is by changing yourself, that affects all those areas. When you become a more happy, peaceful, self-contented person, that affects your job. It affects your relationships. It affects everything. And so I'm really excited to bring my second book to the public as well and continue my website. So yeah, I think 8-year-old Neil would just be totally excited with where we're going.
So from 1 to 11, where would that be?
Oh, yeah, sorry. I should.
That's okay.
I think on the excited scale, I think at this point in time, probably close to an 11.
I love it.
Because it's just starting to get going, and every day is a new opportunity.
I got to say, I know I told you before we had the recording started, but I love the title of your book. That's always my answer when people ask me how I'm doing. And it's funny because sometimes people think I'm being sarcastic, and I'm like, no, for real, because they laugh. And I'm like, no, it's not funny. I really am. So it's
but I mean, that's part of when I see it, because I run in the same thing, especially at the post office. People are like, how are you doing today? I'm living the dream. And they're like, oh yeah, the nightmare. I get that a lot. And I'm like, it's no, really. I mean, like I said, I always tell them, I'm like, hey, I get to work with a great person like yourself today. And it kind of, and I mean that. I mean, I find beauty and greatness in everybody, either whether they're a warning or an example. Everybody's life serves a purpose. And so I'm excited to with anybody I meet, be it the cashier at the grocery store or the person at the coffee shop or coming home to my beautiful lady. I mean, there's always a perfect, reason for everybody to be in your life. Meet a fabulous person like yourself who does a podcast that inspires, people all around the world. I'm elated to be a part of this. So.
Well, thank you so much. I really appreciate you coming on and sharing your story and your light of the candle that you lit so many years ago with the world. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
I sort of feel like I just got a Cliff's Notes version of most of the personal development reading I've been doing in the past 5 or 6 years. So that was nice to get a refresher. And as always, I love chatting with these positive people who are doing big things. And I'm sure that you get that same motivation and inspiration from listening to the podcast, or at least I hope so, because that is part of the goal. Now, as I mentioned at the beginning, you can win a copy of Neil's book, A Happy Life for Busy People. You can do that by heading over to the show notes, which are going to be at www.mandiem.com/episode 121, because this is the 121st episode. Yay, how exciting. Anyway, head there and you can check out the chance to win. And there's also all of the links to the books that we spoke about, as well as to Neil's website where you can purchase his book and his social media links. You can also see pictures of him, of course, if you are interested in that. And that is where, along with YouTube, the video version of the podcast is, in case you're listening in an audio podcast app. Now, if you are in an audio podcast app, please do me a favor and click subscribe. That way this Friday you will not miss the challenge that Neil has for us, which may surprise you because I think he went a direction that I did not expect. So make sure you are listening for that. Also, as I said, part of the goal is to provide motivation and inspiration for people, and I want to do this for as many people as possible. I also hope that these little pushes will help people change their lives a little bit. So to help me reach my goal of changing as many lives as possible, I would really love it if you shared this with your friends and family and social media followers, especially if you loved it. And if you did love it, also in that app that we were talking about, preferably iTunes, I would love a nice rating. This would tell iTunes that other people should listen to the podcast. And again, that's back to the goal of inspiring and motivating as many people as I possibly can with this little mission of mine. So I appreciate that if you do that. Thank you very, very much. I would also love it if you would... what else would I like? I feel like I'm always making requests. I'm just kidding. If you have anyone that you know that's made bold moves, please head over to my site, www.mandiem.com/GUEST, and that is where you can nominate someone, including yourself, to be on the show, because I would love to hear of the bold moves that you're doing and then share them with other people. This Friday, as I said, I have a challenge, so stay tuned for that. And I'm also considering doing a best of podcast near the end of the year. So if you have any opinions on that and you're a longtime listener from any of the podcasts from number 1 all the way here to number 121, let me know what you're thinking and what you loved, and send me a message on my contact form on my website or hit me up on social media, and we will see exactly what we can compile potentially at the end of the year. Otherwise, if I don't hear from many people, I'll just keep delivering these awesome interviews. All right, as always, thank you so much for listening. Be bold and have a sparkly day. Bye-bye.
Take it.